We all know that in the olden days, wars had a tendency to drag on for ages. Well, the Dutch revolt, or the 80 Years' War, continued for almost an entire century. It was basically the revolt of the 17 provinces in the Netherlands against the Spanish king. So, get ready, because we are about to delve right into the middle of this conflict. The Netherlands had been unified in a personal union under the Duke of Burgundy during the 14th and 15th centuries. Born in Ghent and raised in the Netherlands, Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, inherited the Burgundian lands as well as the Spanish monarchy, which had expanded into a global empire with the Spanish colonization of the American continents. In 1556, Charles's son Philip II of Spain ascended to the throne. Philip was born in Spain and had no ties to the Netherlands. Several factors contributed to growing discontent and instability in the Netherlands throughout Philip's reign. The first of these was taxation. In the Habsburg Empire, the Netherlands was a prosperous and entrepreneurial province. Under Charles V's reign, the Holy Roman Empire grew into a global power that was almost constantly at war, against France in the Italian Wars, against the Turks in the Mediterranean Sea, and against Protestantism in Germany. These wars cost the Netherlands a lot of money, yet they were seen as unnecessary and sometimes harmful because they were fought against some of their most important trading partners. Many nobles during this time were not typical aristocrats, but came from families that had risen through trade and finance throughout the centuries. They were enraged by the Spanish rulers' conduct, which jeopardized their fortunes. The Dutch, together with the Portuguese and the Spanish, was the only Western nations trading with Japan at the time. Another major problem at this time was Protestantism. Protestantism rapidly gained ground in Northern Europe during the 16th century. In the 1560s, the Netherlands was not generally Protestant, but Protestants, primarily of the Reformed branch, were a sizable minority who were tolerated by municipal authorities. Freedom and tolerance were regarded as important in a trade-dependent society. However, Charles V and Philip II believed it was their responsibility to combat Protestantism, which resulted in growing resentment in the Netherlands. The situation worsened in the second half of the 20th century. The first insurrection was turned into a war for complete independence due to Philip's deployment of troops and the harsh Spanish repression. Some Dutch Protestants dubbed Philip the Antichrist, imbuing revolt against him with a unique religious fervor. Finally, centralization was another issue that led to the war. Despite the fact that Brussels had become the de facto capital of the Netherlands in the 15th century, the Dutch aristocracy and affluent merchant cities retained a great deal of autonomy. Philip II aspired to enhance the management of his empire by giving the central government more responsibility for things like law and taxes. This piqued the interest of both the nobility and commerce. A little event outside the Antwerp Cathedral on the feast day of the Assumption of the Virgin in 1566 sparked a large iconoclastic movement by the Calvinists. They invaded churches in the Netherlands after the incident on August 15th and smashed statues and portraits of Roman Catholic saints. Statues, according to Calvinist theology, reflected the worship of false idols, which they considered heretical. Philip II had no choice but to send an army because he was outraged at the damage of his faith's churches and feared losing control of the region. Fernando Alvarez de Toledo, 3rd Duke of Alba, marched 10,000 troops into Brussels in 1567. The Counts of Egmont and Hoorn were seized for high treason by the Duke of Alba, and they were decapitated in the Grand Place in Brussels the following year on June 5, 1568. The Count of Egmont was a Flanders general and statesman who came from one of the Netherlands' wealthiest and most powerful families. Through his mother's side, he was Philip II's cousin. The Count of Hoorn was a Gelder stadtholder and a Flanders admiral. He led the majestic ship that transported Philip II from the Netherlands to Spain in 1559. Egmont and Hoorn were Catholic nobility who remained faithful to the King of Spain until their deaths, and they were executed because Alba thought they were too tolerant of Protestantism. Their assassination sparked indignation across the Netherlands. According to some sources, 18,000 individuals were executed in the 6 years after his administration. Alba was dubbed the Iron Duke as a result of the events. William I of Orange was the Margrave of Antwerp and stadtholder of the provinces of Holland, Zeeland, and Utrecht. He fled from the Burgundian Empire to the areas ruled by his wife's father, the Elector Count of Saxony, after Egmont and Hoorn were arrested. He lost all of his holdings and titles in the Netherlands and was labeled an outlaw. In 1568, William returned to Brussels to try to expel the Duke of Alba, who was extremely unpopular. He did not consider this to be a treasonous act against the king. The Battle of Rheindalen, which took place near Roermond on April 23, 1568, is considered the unofficial commencement of the 80 Years' War. On May 23, 1568, the Battle of Helgerlee, widely recognized as the start of the war, took place. The rebels took many cities, although their early victories were aided by the drain on garrisons caused by Spain's simultaneous conflict with the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean. The Spanish were able to send more troops to the Netherlands after their victory at the Battle of Lepanto, 1571, and put down the insurrection. William of Orange remained at large and was regarded as the rebellion's leader from then on. By 1572, the Spanish had largely put down the revolt across the Netherlands. Alba's plans to impose a new tax, the 10th penny, sparked outrage among Catholics and Protestants alike, and sympathy for the insurgents swelled. The rebels acquired a foothold in the north with the conquest of Briel by the Sea Beggars on April 1, 1572. This served as a call to arms for Protestants across the Low Countries to rise up once more. The rebels won the support of the majority of the major cities in the County of Holland. The city of Amsterdam, for example, remained a staunchly Catholic city until 1578. The insurrection was led by William of Orange, who was given the title Prince of Orange. The battle entered a second, more decisive phase as the insurgents' power grew significantly in the northern regions. Because Alba was unable to deal with the insurrection, he was replaced in 1573 by Louis de Requesens, who instituted a new policy of moderation. Spain, on the other hand, had to declare bankruptcy in 1575 and was unable to pay its soldiers, who mutinied and stormed Antwerp in November 1576, killing almost 8,000 people. This so-called Spanish Fury further strengthened the rebels' resolve to seize control of their own destiny in the 17 provinces. The Pacification of Ghent was a treaty that stipulated the withdrawal of the Spanish army and religious tolerance on both sides. The Calvinists, on the other hand, disobeyed this, and Spain dispatched a new army under the command of Alessandro Farnese, Duke of Parma and Piacenza. On January 6, 1579, the southern states, now primarily in France and part of Wallonia, signed the Union of Utrecht, Arras, pledging their allegiance to the Spanish king, encouraged by the new Spanish governor, Alessandro Farnese, and angered by the northern states' militant Calvinism. In response, William formed the Union of Utrecht on January 23, 1579, which brought together the northern states of Holland, Zeeland, Utrecht, Guelders, and the province of Groningen. Bruges, Ghent, Brussels, and Antwerp were among the southern cities to join the Union. In 1581, the Netherlands took the oath of abjuration, declaring its independence from the King of Spain and establishing the United Provinces of the Netherlands. After a period of experimentation, no appropriate king could be identified, and the civilian body States General of the Netherlands was appointed in his place. The Spanish sent an army to recover the United Provinces right after the abjuration oath was taken. Parma reclaimed the majority of Flanders and Brabant, as well as huge swaths of the northeastern provinces over the next few years. In much of this region, the Roman Catholic religion was reinstated. Antwerp, a major city, fell into his hands, forcing the majority of its inhabitants to flee to the north. Antwerp had over 100,000 residents in 1570, but only around 40,000 in 1590 according to estimates. On July 10, 1584, a supporter of Philip II killed William I. His son, Maurice of Nassau, Prince of Orange, would take over as the rebellion's leader. The Netherlands was now divided into two parts, an independent northern section and a Spanish-controlled southern part. The northern provinces are extensively Protestantized in the following decades as a result of the Calvinist-dominated rebels' nearly unbroken control. The south remained under Spanish Catholic control and is still so today. In the south, the Spanish had a significant military force that could be deployed against the French. With the war against them, the United Provinces turned to France and England for assistance. The Dutch even offered them the Dutch throne, which they both declined. For years, England had been covertly helping the Dutch and had now decided to intervene directly. Elizabeth I dispatched Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester, with between 5,000 and 6,000 troops, of which roughly 1,000 were cavalry troopers, to take the reins as the Lord Regent in 1585 under the Treaty of Nonsuch. The Earl of Leicester did not show to be an effective commander. He also didn't grasp the delicate economic relations between the Dutch regents and the Spaniards. As a result, he was sent back. When William of Orange's son, Maurice of Orange, returned to England, he was appointed Captain General of the Dutch Army in 1587 at the young age of 20. This last-minute appointment turned out to be a lifesaver for the Republic. The campaigns of the United Provinces mainly defined the current borders of the Netherlands under Maurice's leadership. Aside from Maurice's obvious tactical ability, the Dutch victories, dubbed the 10 Years of Glory, were also due to Spain's financial burden in replacing ships lost in the disastrous sailing of the Spanish Armada in 1588, as well as the need to refit its navy to regain control of the sea after the English counterattack. When Henry IV of France made war on Spain in 1595, the Spanish government declared bankruptcy for the second time. By reclaiming control of the sea, Spain was able to significantly boost the flow of gold and silver from America, allowing it to exert more military pressure on England and France. More battles followed, and a final campaign was enacted to control the southern provinces. However, the Spanish strengthened their positions along the coast, and the ill-conceived march was stopped. The United Provinces and the Spanish-controlled southern republics began a ceasefire in 1609, later known as the 12 Years' Truce, which was negotiated by France and England in The Hague. During this lull, the Dutch made significant efforts to construct their navy, which would eventually play a critical role in the war's outcome. This peace was short-lived as conflict once again erupted, and in 1622, a Spanish invasion on Bergen-op-Zoom, a strategic defensive town, was repulsed. Maurice perished in 1625 during the siege of Breda by the Spanish. The army was commanded by his half-brother, Frederick Henry, Prince of Orange. The city of Breda was conquered by the Spanish commander Ambrosio Spinola. Following that triumph, the tide began to turn in the Dutch Republic's favor. In 1629, Frederick Henry conquered Hertogenbosch. This town, the largest in northern Brabant, was once thought to be invincible. Its loss was a major setback for the Spaniards. During his famous March along the Meuse in 1632, he also took Venlo, Roermond, and Maastricht. As European countries began to develop their empires, the conflict between them spilled over into colonies. Land battles took place in places like Macau, the East Indies, Ceylon, Formosa, Taiwan, the Philippines, Brazil, and others. The most famous of these clashes was the Dutch-Portuguese War. All participants to the struggle realized that the Spanish would never be able to reclaim control of the areas north of the Meuse-Rhine Delta, and that the Dutch Republic lacked the strength to take the south. In 1639, Spain dispatched a second armada to Flanders, reminiscent of the enormous fleet that went against England in 1588, with 20,000 troops to aid in a final, large-scale attempt to destroy the northern rebels. In the Battle of the Downs, Lieutenant Admiral Martin Tromp decisively destroyed the armada. The Treaty of Münster between Spain and the Netherlands concluded the war on January 30th, 1648. So that was all the time we had today, folks. Hope you enjoyed this video. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel and do hit the bell icon to remain updated about all our future videos. Till then, see ya.